All right, what's up, Josh Macuga Show fans? We are still live from my kitchen. We're still here. We took some time off because I don't know. I think life just got me, but we're back. We're going to start doing way more episodes. We've got some fun ones lined up, but I've been wanting to get this gentleman on this show for a long time. Obviously, the idea would have been to bring him on the actual show and talk for as long as we wanted to. But because of the circumstances, still here. He's got an amazing documentary coming out on Hulu this weekend, July 17th. It's called We Are Freestyle, Love Supreme. I got a chance to watch it early. That's not a humble brag. It's just, it was awesome. It was a really, really cool thing. I like to consider this guy, maybe over the last 5 to 6 years, has become the godfather of the docuseries. You guys remember him from the Schmoes No days? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Andrew Freed.
Thank you, Josh Macuga.
What's up, buddy?
That is quite the intro. I'm not used to that kind of stuff. You're gonna make me blush. Thank you.
Well,
so wait. Before we even start, so is everybody experiencing this show against that backdrop of that picture of me and my name underneath that?
Yes. Would you like me to take that off?
No. It's just awesome to know that it is us in split screen over. Honestly, you can't see it now, but when I saw that picture, I was like, wow, that's the greatest picture that's ever been taken of me. Like, that's like what I want to look like when I get dressed. And so I use it for any excuse of anybody who would ever want, dating sites, Josh Macuga show, all of the things. That is sort of that's my picture.
It's your IMDb profile pic, which is where my graphics guy ripped it from. So,
it's everywhere. Your graphics guy. I'll send it to your graphics guy. Anywhere, it's everywhere. Any opportunity that I have to push that picture out into the world, I looked like that for that moment, and I think I look great there. Maybe it's not that great a picture. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, when life comes full circle and somebody does a docuseries on you, that will be the picture on the promo of your Netflix series, Freed, a life of docu. I don't know.
Yeah, the God. Well, now we've just named it the Godfather of docuseries, which
exactly. I like that you're embracing this. I like that you're embracing it.
Look, I'm here for all of it.
So we met as me as like a background character at the Schmoes No, and I think we became buddies that one day at like an early Schmodown. And you were always very complimentary of me. And then I kind of became your biggest fan because you have created what are the best Netflix docuseries, in my opinion, of all time. And my favorite things to watch. I know Cheer was my wife lived for Cheer, and I in turn lived for Cheer. I think it's one of those shows that, we struggle as a couple to find shows that we love together. Like the wife loves one thing, I love one thing. And so when those shows that can like bring us together, and not only that, kind of bring together this zeitgeist, like Cheer was one of those ones where, cream rises to the top, right? And in this crazy television maelstrom that we have going on right now, it's one of those shows that really did hit the conversation.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. And I will accept the compliment on behalf of Greg Whiteley and his team, who are the folks out in the trenches who are really making that show frame by frame, minute to minute. Greg, we've been working with since Last Chance U, which is also a show that he directs and executive produces. And so his, it's sort of a funny thing with Cheer, right? Because we make these shows and you love some of them, and some of them you wish you had done something a little bit different. You learn from all of them, right? But you really have no way of knowing how any of them will connect with an audience whatsoever, right? I mean, now we have a little bit of an inkling because Netflix is this platform, this thing that, we never could have imagined that it was when we first did Chef's Table back in 2015. Back in 2015, like it's ancient history. But to be honest, when we did Chef's Table in 2015, it was their first show, our first unscripted original, and I still had DVDs in red envelopes from Netflix. Right. So like, it is ancient history in many ways. But you make these shows and you have no idea how people are going to connect to them or respond to them. There was a moment on Cheer where, for those of you who have watched the show, like, you can imagine that as the executive producer, there were some specific legal things that I needed to very much like sign off on as like a final. I had seen one cut earlier, I had seen another cut, these things sort of come in and out, but I had to like watch all the shows and raise my hand and say, I feel good about all of this going out into the world. And I hadn't watched them, and I said I was going to, and finally my assistant just like blocked out like 7 hours or 8 hours of a day to just watch the shows. And I'm in my office now, and so I would sit and watch one of the shows and then like storm out my door and be like, holy shit, does everybody realize how good this fucking show is? Like, this is really good. And then I'd go back and watch another episode and then just like kick the door open and be like, oh my God, like, do people have you? And everyone's like, yes, we all know. Like, everyone here knows.
That's why we've been telling you to watch it. Yeah.
And so, and then Chrissy Teigen posts a picture on Instagram of her in her cheerleading outfit saying, watching Cheer made me want to post this. And as far as I can tell, the rest is, I don't want to say the rest is history about a show that I'm a part of, but it was cool.
Yeah.
It was cool. And this thing that, like, it's a documentary. You know what I mean? Like, it is not a reality show. It's a documentary without a dead body in it. Also, when you keep in mind, when you think about like documentary television that has crossed over into being that like zeitgeisty stuff, there's a corpse somewhere along the lines, whether it's the OJ doc that Ezra Edelman did for ESPN, which is amazing, or the Jinx, or Making a Murderer, or any of these doc television series that have taken off and become part of like the culture or the pop culture. This one is about, a bunch of really dynamic, wonderful, interesting cheerleaders in Corsicana, Texas.
And it's, I think the other magical thing that not only Cheer does, but Last Chance U does, is it brings to light these football programs that and cheer programs that are so big in these people's worlds, but the everyday person has no idea even exists at all.
And I think that's the universality that we tap into, and that what Greg is really sort of unpeeling for everybody is that we all have our Making Matt. We all have our Daytona. We all have our stuff that is the most important thing to us and that we are building towards. And outside of our little ecosystems, where within those ecosystems, it's the most important thing ever.
Yeah.
Outside of our ecosystems, nobody's even aware of it, but that's the beauty of it. For us, in a sort of lame way, we just like celebrate ourselves, so like when we got our film into Sundance in January, that's one of those things, right? Like Sundance, but for some reason, so many people know about Sundance. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Sort of this mainstream thing.
It's those like bucket list check off the items as like somebody that gets into this thing is, man, I'd love to be in a Sundance movie. Check it off. I would love to now have like a Netflix show. Check it off. If you're a comedian, I want that Netflix special kind of a situation. So, those are like on an upper echelon of situations. Whereas, you watch for me, I thought that Cheer was more of a drama wrapped in a comedy of sorts. Do you know? It's at certain points, because there were some beautifully funny moments with all those people. Whereas I think that where Last Chance U might be a drama wrapped in a tragedy, because a lot of those kids sometimes, like, you're watching, especially the last season of Last Chance U was so brutally painful to watch for a lot of those kids. And you're rooting so hard for them Every single one of them, especially the ones that you follow, you're rooting so hard for them to succeed. And when they don't, it crushes you because they're a real person. It's not a movie character.
Right. And it's not an episode of Survivor, right? Like it's not in this fake thing that has been built, and the host before every commercial break says, you know, to win 10,000 or the Mirrorball Trophy, or you get to be Donald Trump's apprentice, or whatever the thing was.
Yes.
Right? Like, this is a real thing for real people, and it's real life. It's not just the thing, right? It's their lives. And again, I cannot admire Greg Whiteley enough of what he does and the stories he's telling. And look, that's been my career. It's funny that you say like these things that you want to check off.
Yeah.
I don't. You know me, like I wanted to be doing what you're doing, and I wanted to. Every time I thought I had figured out exactly what those list of things were that I wanted to check off, life pushed me in a slightly different direction, and I hopefully have been successful, and I've been present enough in what I've been doing that I've enjoyed it and continued to learn from it, and all of those things. But like, I never wanted to direct a movie at Sundance. It's awesome. It was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
And like, anybody who does have that on their list, like, you're right for having it on your list. It was like the coolest thing to be a part of ever. And it ended up being a bit of the last dance.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, it was the best. But I don't know. I had never set that as like a thing that I was shooting for. I never had a passion for food before I was making Chef's Table and Street Food. So like the idea that like we've won 4 James Beard Awards.
Yeah.
Like that is like a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for it and so appreciative of it. But I never made it. Those were never my Everests.
Sure.
You know, like I don't know what my Everests are now. Like it still is to host my own late night talk show. Like like that doesn't change. But I'm not quite on that path.
You mentioned Sundance, and I want to get back to like your kind of origin story, as we do this.
Whatever you want, Josh. Whatever you want, man. I'm in your hands.
This is. I feel like you and I were very simpatico because you and I could talk to somebody for 5 straight hours and never get tired of talking. Like you and I we were born talkers. It's kind of what we were supposed to do.
It's why your wife is a saint for surviving meals with us.
It's very, very true. All I want to do on a 5-hour car ride is talk to her the whole time, and all she wants to do is be silent. That's the situation. But so we are Freestyle Love Supreme, which comes out this Friday, July 17th on Hulu, or Saturday on Hulu. I think so, right? 15, 16,
I think it's Friday, the 17th.
Friday, 17th.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I did my research, obviously. No.
It's gonna release on a Tuesday morning.
Hulu, Hulu sometimes they're not the Netflix that just like every Friday, boom. Hulu as a platform, I mean, that Palm Springs movie they just released was fantastic. As soon as Disney bought Hulu, you knew something was gonna explode. But so I'm watching this Freestyle Love Supreme, and if somebody that knew nothing about them at all, right? And to watch that origin story of the whole thing, and for those out there that don't know, just briefly give them what Freestyle Love Supreme is, and then because you had said this was a dream pet project of yours for a very, very long time. Had you seen them before? Did you know about it? Because it is a very niche situation.
Yeah. In the summer of 2005, is today the 14th? Okay. Yeah. I shit you not. 15 years ago today, 15 years ago, July 14th of 2005, I went to an improv show called Freestyle Love Supreme. And it was at this theater called Ars Nova in New York. My friend Brett Goffin had been telling me for days to go see this show, and I just didn't go see it. And on Thursday, July 14th, I remember him emailing me that morning and saying, "Tonight's the last show, go or don't. It's sort of your loss if you miss it. Like, why am I begging you to go to this show?" So thank you, Brett Goffin.
Yeah.
So I went to see this show. It was improvised hip hop, long form. It was long form improv comedy done solely through improvised music, freestyle, hip hop, all of these sort of ingredients.
Yeah.
As a former performer or an aspiring performer, I'd done improv. I had all the different improv groups with the silly names, and I had done stand up, and I had done, the experimental films at USC and whatever the hell else.
Right.
All the things that never were going to pay anything. I was king of the not getting paid actor business.
I probably did 150 student films when I lived in New York, and another 50 when I got here. Yeah, dude, I know about the unpaid student films. I get
that's far more. That's far more than I did, but I loved it. But anyway, I saw this improv show in New York 15 years ago today, and as soon as it was done, I said to Lauren Sherman, who was with me at the show, and I was just like, "Fuck those guys," and she was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, that they are so talented and that they are so good at what I just saw, and that they made it look so easy and so fun. Like, I am incredibly jealous of that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I'm going to sleep for the next 3 days.
Yes.
3 weeks later, I was sleeping on their couch in Edinburgh, Scotland, as they were performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And I was filming with a buddy of mine named Greg Boncala. We were filming them for a few days with this idea that I had at the time, which was going to be a TV show about this improv group. And if you hang out with them during the day, almost like the initial conceit of Seinfeld.
Yeah, yeah.
You hang out with them during the day. I remember when we were shooting with them, Bill Sherman, one of the members of the group, got shit on by a bird. And then that night they were talking on stage about, because improv has no filter. And so what happens during the day has to end up on the stage. And that's going to be the show that we're going to pitch. And I'm filming with them in Edinburgh. We film with them in New York. I got them at bus stops and hot dog carts, just like freestyling and doing their thing. But I knew that they were the most talented group of people I had ever had real contact with.
Yeah.
I was out in LA hanging out with Christian Harloff and Brett Sheridan and, lovely guys. But then I see these guys in New York. I'm just kidding. I knew that there was something special. And I knew, quite honestly, that we were at the beginning of something. And in filming them, they knew they were at the beginning of something. And so that became, Lynn and Tommy. So who is this group? Sorry, I'm burying the story. Yeah. The group is Freestyle Love Supreme, and the members of the group are Lin-Manuel Miranda, Chris Jackson, Anthony Viniziali, Tommy Kail is the director of the group, Bill Sherman, Arthur Lewis, UTK ends up joining the group. These amazingly creative and wonderful, and Shockwave, the beatboxer. These incredibly, amazingly talented people who have gone on to very much shape what the American theater looks like in the 21st century. And I was sleeping on their couch 15 years ago, recording them, like busking in the street, trying to get people to go to their improv show.
So, but you almost kind of glazed over. It's like the Seinfeld yada yada, not to do like a throwback there, but you were like, and a week later I was sleeping on their couch. Were you the dude that kind of stalked him after the show, or like met him at a coffee shop or whatever in order to go and sleep on the couch to shoot what they were doing? Or was it because they didn't really have anybody that was doing just that?
I had been the associate producer of a movie called Fade to Black, which was a documentary about Jay-Z. It was really my first job.
Yeah.
I mean, there were other jobs before that, but that was like my first credit.
Yeah.
And they were sort of fanboys of that.
Okay.
And so when I reached out to their manager, my friend Alex had worked with one of their agents, and so knew their manager. And like, just through that, like, conversation around them, when their manager said, yeah, this guy who, had been an associate producer on Fade to Black wants to meet with you guys, I was freelancing at Radical Media in New York at the time.
We worked at Radical Media at the same time, right?
We did?
Yeah, and we had no idea we were both there at the same time.
In New York?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, I was working on that Ford Bold Moves documentary, and you were there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with a lot of my friends, I mean, that Ford Bold Moves doc was like, I mean, Jonah Moran, who cut everything for me when I was in New York, just edited the Hamilton movie.
No way. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine he was in the editing department of sorts. His name was Len Carter. And he brought me on to just, Len Carter, crazy man, just a crazy human being. Yeah.
I made stuff with Len Carter
at
the Tribeca Film Festival when I was first starting out, and Len makes stuff happen, man. So you were working with Len.
I was working with Len on that Ford Bold Moose thing, and he brought me in because he saw me in I wrote a bunch of this is like New York style stuff, right? So I wrote a bunch of comedy monologues that I had other people perform outside of their comfort zone for this theater group, right?
Okay.
And so Len was in the audience, and I had kind of directed it, and his friend was one of the people performing, and he's like, you got to meet this guy, and he brought me in to maybe do some creative, just look at the Ford Bold Moves document and see if we can make this more exciting than just people looking at cars at Ford, right? And so I just came in as a creative consultant for a month on that docuseries. And then I moved to LA 2 days later. I was there for a month, and then that was my last job in New York before I moved to LA.
I was fully there then, and I go back a long way with Len and so many of the people on that team. Jonah and Elise and Derek C. in France was on that, and Mike Warren was on that, and a lot of great people were on that.
That was
Bill Winters shot that. Got a lot of good, talented people.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge undertaking because that was Ford basically trying to recreate their entire.
Oh, I remember it. Ford Bold Moves.
And that was the first the coolest celebrity I met walking through Radical Media, and nobody recognized him because nobody really knows what he looks like. But if you've been to a panel, you know what he looks like. I met Matt Groening in an elevator there, and
that's good.
And I was talking to him, and I was like, I'm sure people tell you this all the time, Simpsons, whatever. But I said to him, I think the most criminally underrated comedy all time is Futurama. And he goes to me, he said, if I could tell you the amount of people that just say I'm a Simpsons fan and never say anything about Futurama. I love Futurama. I want to, and now look at Futurama as this cult classic. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Radical used to have a lot of interesting people going through there. I met with Hulk Hogan when I was at Radical. Kanye West used to be through the hallways there. But I actually introduced Lynn, and it's one of the only things that I've ever really been a little annoyed about with Lynn, which is I introduced him to Weird Al Yankovic at Radical. I was having a meeting with Weird Al Yankovic, and it was while I was filming with Lynn, and he's like, I got to meet him. I have to meet him. And so Lynn sat at my desk and pretended to work there. And so when I came out of the conference room, I was like, oh, Lynn Miranda, this is Al Yankovic. And it's gone on that now Lynn and Weird Al is a huge influence on Lynn. It's why Lynn will say that it's how he learned different styles of music and that he could do different styles of music because Weird Al Yankovic can have such a spectrum of genres on his albums. They got their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame together. They have a real thing going. Wow. And in Rolling Stone, they asked Lynn, how'd you meet Weird Al Yankovic? And he told some story that had nothing to do with him sitting at my desk at Radical. And I was just like, dude, I introduced you to that guy. And he was like, oh yeah, Anyway, I think Lynn's done right by me. It's fine.
So we are Freestyle Love Supreme. So when you're watching this and I don't want to take away anything from the other performers, and I will say, I had the exact same response that you did after you saw the show was fuck these guys, because it is okay. Improv comedy is one thing. And again, we come from very similar schools of stand up. I was in an improv troupe. I was in all that kind of stuff. I never really went far with improv because I always looked at it as it is so hard to get a group of people together, especially in Los Angeles and New York, to like practice, because it takes so much practice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you need a group of dedicated people that are willing to sacrifice everything. And there's only like, that's the 0.001% of the population. And that's why I think like there are certain artists that succeed and there are certain artists that fail, and then succeed. It's that Oscar Wilde quote of like, it took you 25 years to be an overnight success, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm watching this, I'm like, this is the kind of improv I would love to be able to do, because that is something I could watch over and over and over again, because I'm so impressed with it. It's like when I went and I lived in Italy, I took an opera class because I was so intrigued by that genre of performing, and learning what it takes to be an opera performer goes along with, you can tell me opera's boring, whatever you want to do. But when you watch an opera performer, it is an unbelievably talented situation going on in front of you. That's the same thing I felt with Freestyle Love Supreme, is like, where do these guys find it? Where do they find it kind of a situation?
You know, they are encyclopedias of knowledge around the most random things. But they really are like, they are a collection of those friends who know everything about everything. Mm-hmm. If you say a movie quote, they finish the movie. Mm-hmm. If you say a line from a song, they finish the song. And they have come up with this thing, and you know, they also have this thing called Freestyle Love FLS Academy, which is, you know, bringing people in to sort of teach them how to do it. Right. They have figured out how to almost train your brain, like no different than learning a different language, where at some point, and this is actually, I'm stealing this from our movie, but you know, Anthony Beninziali, who's one of the creators of the group, and is really like the front man of the group. He talks about when you're learning a language and you start to dream in the foreign language, that happens with this freestyle. But it is a technique, and it is sport, and it's incredibly impressive. And by the way, I will say, and it is not for cameras. Like, it exists in the room for those people as they are experiencing it. And the experience of sitting in the room with it is a magic trick. That's what it feels like. You sort of have that feeling when you've been like tricked almost, even though there is no trick to it. But that's the feeling that you have while you're watching it. You know, we're not getting together and watching anything right now. And so I do think the little taste, but we couldn't do a concert movie of improv. Right. Because as you know, like, it just doesn't, it's not meant for that audience. It's not meant to be captured in that way. So we're using it hopefully in the right way. And
I think it, you know, the beautiful part about this movie is the wow factor, right? I think that's the whole thing of We Are Freestyle Love Supreme is the wow factor. It is, you know, okay, these four guys now have, you know, like the branches, the tendrils, right? Ken Knapsack and I are obsessed with origin stories and where people have gone, like coaching trees in football, right? Or coaching trees in basketball. Same thing is.
Do you listen to Jim Miller's stuff?
Yeah.
Jim Miller's the man. Jim Miller, who wrote the CAA book and the ESPN book and the Saturday Night Live book, and he has, I think it's called Origins Podcast. Anyway, he's awesome.
Oh, incredible.
Good guy. Yeah.
Well, watching like where things, to use the John Facenda, like where they matriculate down the field, to see that, you know, and them talking briefly about that Lin-Manuel had this idea for Hamilton, and now Hamilton is like the biggest thing. And, you know, We Are Freestyle Love Supreme. You can see that, like you said, it is inspired what theater, a modern theater kind of looks like, because, you know, there's at least 100 people out there trying to imitate what Hamilton did. Right? Or what We Are Freestyle Love Supreme did.
Well, now that Hamilton exists, and I love Hamilton, but I am not the documentarian of Hamilton, nor am I a student of it. I watched it, you know, I've been fortunate enough to see it in some pretty cool settings.
Sure.
And I watched it 2 Fridays ago with my kids the night it came out, excited as anybody else, but like, I don't know every word to it, and I don't pretend to be. But I can say, from having watched this group of performers do this a few times, because before Hamilton, it was In the Heights, which for me was like such a major part of my life.
Mhm.
And really kicked in doors creatively on 16 different things for me in 16 different ways for me. But, and I think that's in our film. Like you'll see that my journey with them through In the Heights is a real meat of this film.
Yeah.
But what happens is they create the thing. Like people ask like why Lin ends up being the lead in these musicals. And it's not because he's the best actor or the best singer. It's because until he gives voice to these words, nobody would really know how to look on the page and look on the music and figure out how to do it.
Mhm.
Like he's sort of inventing a language again, going back to language. Within the Heights, it was a very specific thing. It was not theatrical speaking over music, nor was it like hip hop, from a record scratch album. Like he sort of invents a language. He obviously is inventing an entire genre and just a way of communicating. I always say like the most impressive thing about Hamilton, beyond Lin's words and musical notes, is that Tommy Kail, the director, who's also in our film, gets everybody to dream the same version of it. Like,
Mhm.
how did he get the costumes and the sets and the music and the choreography and the lighting and the sound? Like, how did he get all of those people to dream the same dream?
It's an
When
art.
it's such an abstract thing. What the hell is Hamilton? It's like authentic, but it's not. It's a departure, but it's concrete. I don't know. Anyway, so once they do their thing, now it kicks in the door on everybody who knows those words and knows that music, and now they are informed with what to create. It's what Run DMC and the Beastie Boys were for everybody that followed, right?
Yeah. I mean, those, like any kind of music or theater or movie or TV show, it's like, okay, now this is the pitch I need to go in with to Fox. Is like, it's Hamilton mixed with Beauty and the Beast, or it's Hamilton mixed with McDonald's. I don't know, but you get what I'm getting at.
But I try to think of it even more creatively, purely, or whatever the turn of phrase should be, but in a more creative, pure way, which is, oh, we can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm not going to do Hamilton. Like we had that with Chef's Table. When we released Chef's Table, everybody wanted to do the Chef's Table of blank.
Totally.
And I think the people who really used it, hopefully as something that like is creatively like cathartic and rich, is to be like, oh, we could do that. Like we could shoot that documentary on prime lenses and we could tell stories in that type of like textured way. Like we could hold the audience's attention in that way. Oh, we could put classical music to that stuff. Like you give, and again, my collaborators, David Galvin, Brian McGinn on Chef's Table and Street Food are the people who taught me that. Like, oh, we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what can we do with that? And how do we, steal some of that juice and put it into something totally different?
Well, I think like any great artist, like yourself, surrounding yourself with the best people, surrounding yourself with the right people. Like when people come into your office or people come and talk to you, you can see, I like to think of myself as a pretty decent judge of character, right? So like when I meet somebody, I feel like you have about 10 to 20 minutes to get me. And if you don't get me, I'll never be mean to you, but it's just not going to work out. Right. And why I was so picky until I met my wife, or why I'm like so picky with who I work with and who I, am friends with and who I've stayed friends with, is because I know there are certain people that I always want around me because I find talented. I find them extremely, extremely kind. I think kindness is so over. It's just, we don't even look at it anymore. It's like, what can you do for me instead of what can we do together? Right. And I think that's one of the beautiful things you've been able to do in all of your projects. Because when I look at certain names, I'm one of those guys that is obsessed with end credits of things. Like I look at people's names and who is that person and what have they worked on? Again, tendrils going places.
Yeah.
And in all your projects that Boardwalk Pictures does, I can tell that you have surrounded yourself with the people that, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, like Tommy Kail, have created and seen the vision all together, because you can't have 9 plow trucks all plowing in different directions. Nobody will get it.
No, some have said that maybe my actual talent in all of this is not as a producer or a director, but as a matchmaker, and I'll take that.
Sure.
Like, I too have that same sort of visceral gut reaction to people, and you either want to make stuff with them or you don't. And so, you find those people along the way and you grab hold of them for as long as you can. And then ultimately, because I'm such a good sort of person who can perceive great character and people who really care and who try really hard all the time, like, you can't sort of hold on to them for all that long. But when I look back on our current collaborations, Greg Whiteley, I've said, David Gelb, Brian McGinn, I've said, that just is the beginning of the list of people that, like, we currently make awesome stuff with.
Right.
But yeah, through the years, like, Rachel Morrison used to shoot almost everything that I worked on back in the day, and she went on to be, the biggest cinematographer in town and the first woman to be nominated for that Academy Award.
Yeah.
Having shot not only Mudbound, which she was nominated for, but Black Panther in the same year.
Yeah.
Like, she's one of those, like, credit readers, like, oh, she did what? Like, the random ping pong show that I did for ESPN back in the day, like, Michael John Warren was the director of that, and Rachel Morrison was, I don't even know if she was the DP. She might have just been a camera op for that. But, like, Tommy Kail, I've been making stuff with for a long time.
Yeah.
Lin Miranda, I've been making stuff with for a long time. Bill Sherman, who's also in Freestyle Love Supreme, is one of my favorite people to make stuff with. And you wouldn't know it. We don't even say it in the movie, but, like, he's the musical director of Sesame Street now.
Wow.
Like, every Grammy-winning and Emmy-winning song that has come from Sesame Street over the last, I don't know how many years he's been doing it, but like a good 7-8 years, I think.
Wow.
He's just, like, churning those songs out and adding hardware to his mantle. And, like, that doesn't even get mentioned in our movie.
Right.
Because there's Lin Miranda and Chris Jackson and Tommy Kail and Utkarsh and all these other people. So it's
an incredible watch. It really is.
Thank you.
Congrats and congratulations on all that.
Thank you.
I will say, because I text you whenever any of your shows come out, is that I watch everything. So
thank you.
I have, as my wife would say it, like, an unbelievable ability to do, like, 6 things at once, and I can watch a show at the same time as I'm doing something else and still absorb it, and get all of that in me.
That would drive me crazy, but I can respect, and I know that you do that because you're one of these encyclopedia knowledge people. I mean, if you got in the room with those guys, it would be annoying, certainly to your wife. But you're one of those guys, and so it's amazing that you're multitasking while doing that, because that makes it even gives me anxiety.
When we talked about Chef's Table a few times, but
sure.
Do you think that Chef's Table was like your Moonlight, your Barry Jenkins Moonlight? Was that your everything that really just launched it to the next level?
Well, again, it's hardly mine. You know what I mean? It's really hardly mine. Like, I want I'll tell you, a boardwalk is a gathering place. Yeah. Okay. So Boardwalk Pictures, which is my company, the name is inspired that I grew up in a beach town. And when you didn't know what to do, there were no cell phones. You didn't know where anybody was. When I was old enough that my mom let me cross the boulevard on my bicycle, you went to the boardwalk and you found people. You didn't know who you were going to find. You didn't know what you were going to do, but it was a gathering place. And so that's what I always wanted this company to be. And to give people the permission, like, look, there were reality shows 10 years ago when we started Boardwalk. Honey Boo Boo and John and K+8 and the Kardashians and Duck Dynasty and everything else. Like, people were craving something real.
Right.
But that was hardly authentic. But it was real.
Right.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you had, real documentary, like journalism and scratchy black and white footage and, great filmmakers, the Maisels. And I worked for Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky for a while, and, just great documentary filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to do something that was closer to the documentary, but entertainment first. How do we do this for a broad audience? How do we bring people in so that, it's for as many people as possible and it's entertaining, but it is documentary. And so that's been the thrill for me. And I've just, to your point, I've just added people to the gang along the way. I met David Gelb and had seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And it was like, yeah. What are you doing? What can we do together? And how can I add value specifically to what you want to do? That's very different from how I add value to what Greg Whiteley wants to do, and how we add value to a Mike Warren project, or, the Goop Lab, or, there's so many different things and so many different stories that we tell. And it's really a collection of the people who are actually telling them. I'm more of a facilitator. But yes, to your original question, Chef's Table changed the world.
Yeah.
For all of us. And for the, I hope I'm not immodest to say, but like, I think it changed the business a little bit. Like, premium documentary, there were lots of cooking shows. There were lots of cooking networks, food networks, what have you. Chef's Table sort of told people that you could do something that's premium and artful and different. And, however many shows later, 20 some odd shows or features and series later, we're still trying to push that.
I mean, there is, like you talked about, putting classical music to the food. There is just something so magical about getting to the end of those shows and having, the beautiful symphonic nature of food. Because, I mean, the genius behind that is that when you're eating something or you're listening to something, there are certain sensories going off, whether it's your mouth watering. Like, you've been places where a smell, and you walk in. Like, a buddy of mine lost his sense of smell, and he said the hardest part was going into pizza shops, knowing what they smelled like and not being able to smell it. Right?
That's wild. Yeah.
But it's that chill that runs up your spine when you smell an ex-girlfriend's perfume, right? Mm-hmm. It's that mouth-watering that take you back to, the smell of walking into the
Dude, I bought a face mask the other day just to make it current. Yeah. And it's like a nicer one. Like, it was it's meant to be like almost like a dress-up face mask.
Sure. Yeah.
And I put it on, and it smelled like my grandfather's closet.
See?
And not in like a weird old man way, and just like, whatever his shirts were made of is what this is made of. And I called my mom, tears in my eyes, like, I am just smelling grandpa.
Totally.
And so, yes, I totally feel that.
My great grandma's house smelled like pizzelles. Every time I see or go to an Italian store, I know that.
The secret of Chef's Table, one of not the secret, but sort of the conversations that we have that I am eager to have with you, because I know what you're a fan of as well. Chef's Table, they're superhero movies. They're the first superhero movie in like a long chain, right? And so it's just like, and that's how we think about them. Who is this person? What are her superpowers?
Yeah.
When did she discover those superpowers? What was the sort of tumultuous journey that she had in wrestling what to do with those superpowers, finding her voice, harnessing those superpowers, and then using them for good. And so the thing at the end that you're reacting to, that you're smelling the smells and you're feeling the feels, it's not very different from like the big scene in Superman 2 when, they're in Times Square.
Yeah, no, it's so well said. I mean, that's the thing is, my brother always asked me, why do they have written by in docuseries, or why do they have directed docuseries? And I said, because it is a written, directed form. It just doesn't come together. You need to ask the right questions. You need to get the right footage. You need to put it in the right place. just because it doesn't have a script doesn't mean that it is, it kind of scripts itself, but there has to be somebody there to mold the situation into it.
Well, it's written with existing words.
Yeah.
You still have to put those words in a particular order to tell the story that you want to tell. Totally. And then you paint the walls with the visuals. But yeah, we are Freestyle Love Supreme. The editors, Brian Anton and Peter Curtis, have written by credits on it because, yeah, I handed them a box of tapes, some of which were really, really old. Yeah. Like this is what we started shooting this movie on. You know what I mean? And so they took the words that we had captured and then wrote a movie with those words.
Just awesome. Is there a pitch or somebody that's come into your office that you either passed on or maybe we've gone a different direction that you regret doing so, or something so wild that you took a chance on that maybe didn't work? I don't, do you know what I'm saying?
Well, for me, most of those things end up not getting sold. Like things that I believed in. There have been some crazy projects that I have pursued and put very real time into that don't ultimately make it to air.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of an opportunity that sort of passed me by somehow. There are, I'm sure there are, and I can't think of them. But when you ask that question around that topic, it's more about things that we have really taken pretty far down the road and then nothing has happened from. But that's what Freestyle Love Supreme was. Understand, I shot in Scotland with these guys. My boss, John, came and gave me $5,000 to go shoot them in Scotland. We came back and edited together 16 different sizzle reels, and that show never happened.
Right.
And then In the Heights started, and Paul Bosmowski and I filmed everything around In the Heights for 2.5 years.
Jeez.
because we thought, I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage.
Wow.
Because we were sure that there was a multi-episodic series around the making of In the Heights, and that didn't sell. And we did an hour special, a great performances episode that we both, Paul and I both, and everyone that's a part of that, are incredibly proud of. But we thought we were making like 8 1-hour episodes, and that didn't happen. And so this was one of those. Then all of a sudden I'm living in LA and Hamilton's happening. And it's like, oh, fuck. These guys that I was with for like years, it took me to move 3,000 miles away for them to, Lynn was on the cover of Rolling Stone and Time magazine the same week. Like, it was crazy what happened.
Yeah. And
then I was sitting with Tommy Kail in New York in the fall of 2018. And I, was going through a divorce, and it was just like a weird time. Mm-hmm. And Tommy said, we're going to get the group back together and do this 1-month run. And we had developed this joke amongst the group where everybody would always say, are we rolling on this? Like, I remember Lynn opening night of Hamilton on Broadway would come up to me and be like, are we rolling on this? And it was sort of like making fun of the fact that I wasn't, right? Like, I'd spent so much time filming them. And then Bill Sherman said it to me at his wedding. Are we rolling on this? And so when Tommy said to me, we're going to get the group back together to do with this 1-month run, I sort of half expected him to look at me and be like, should we be rolling on this?
Yeah.
But instead, he looked at me very simply, as friends do, as a friend who I think also knew maybe what his friend needed at that time.
Yeah.
And he said, should we finish our film?
Damn.
Come on. You'll come to New York. We're going to run it for a month. You'll come for the month. It'll be great. We'll finish our movie.
Incredible.
And it was like, so that's the most famous story. The most famous story is tapes from Scotland that like were never going to be anything.
Yeah.
That now is, an amazing part of my life.
It's kind of an inspiring story too, of like, never give up on a situation, because it can come full circle if you believe in it, if the people behind it and the vision that you see, if like, maybe it's a script that I wrote 10 years ago that I still have, that one day somebody's like, this is what I'm looking for. Boom, I have it, right? It's that magical thing of you being able to roll cameras, see the potential in it, right place, right time. Your life takes 9 different turns from guy in Spin City in one episode in 2000. As I'm looking at your IMDb, I went to your IMDb and I was like, he had to have been in some episode of something. I was like, boom, it's Spin City. That's what I'm looking
I always thought of that character as a Frenchman who had come to work at the mayor's office. His name was Guy, Josh.
Guy.
That was not Guy.
You're right.
I don't know this guy that you're talking about. I imagined him to be Guy, maybe French Canadian.
Well, Michael J. Fox is in it. He's Canadian, so there you go.
There you go. It was actually okay. So you talk about random stuff.
Yeah. I
was on Charlie Sheen's first episode of Spin City.
Oh shit.
And I got my SAG card, and it's the only time I was ever really in anything.
Yeah.
But they had moved the show from New York to LA. It was after Michael J. Fox had come public that he was sick and he was not going to be able to do that show anymore. Charlie Sheen was going to extend the thing, and it wasn't even 2 words. It was a scene or 2, but my scenes were introducing a new character who never appeared. So like I watched this show that I'm on, and it was all to introduce this new series regular who actually has gone on to have a very successful career. But she was going to be the new series regular, and my little running joke throughout the episode was to set her up. She was like the bike messenger who was going to come on staff, and she never appeared. But Charlie Sheen's first episode, wow. I was, Gary David Goldberg was there, who was a hero of mine and who has since passed. It was a pretty cool 2 words. Totally. That I breathed life into the character of Guy.
Just like Guy LaFleur did for the NHL, you did for Guy on Spin City. Yeah.
Right. But of all of the organizations that I've, bring it full circle from the beginning of this interview, the only box that I ever really wanted to check was that. Yeah. Like getting my SAG card and having a dressing room with my name on it on Spin City was everything when that happened. That's so cool. It was a big deal. And it still is. I still hold my SAG card for all the, I'm a proud member of the DGA, the Producers Guild, all of these things, and it's awesome. Like it's pinch me over and over again. We get nominated for awards and we get to sit in Norman Lear's Day. Like it's all amazing. But those 2 words on Spin City were a big deal. It's
when I first got into this, right, when I wanted to be in entertainment, I went to college for something completely different. I didn't come from, a quote unquote entertainer background, like entertainment family background, anything like that. But my dad and mom were always very supportive. My grandma on my dad's side sang in the USO during World War II. She was also a member of the WAC, and, a bunch of artists, funny people that love to entertain. When I got into doing this, my dad always said, celebrate the little victories. And then the guy that I took a small little theater course at Penn State, he said, celebrate the little victories, because you never know when you're going to look back on those little victories and think, God, that was so effing cool, right? It was like the time I got bumped by Dave Chappelle at the Laugh Factory. I was like, oh, amazing. I gladly get bumped by Dave Chappelle, right? I go and do extra work when I'm living in New York on We Own the Night, and I got my SAG card because I was wearing a members only jacket in an 80s scene, right? It's those awesome little victories of Dr. Phil put me in a pilot because he needed color for something. It's those little victories that like come full circle, but when you look back on it, they had an extremely important feeling when they happened in your life. I think that's like, that beautiful thing of what you hit with Freestyle Love Supreme is these guys. And now that.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying all of that. And I totally feel, it's why you and I are simpatico. Like I feel that same thing. Look, I had been filming with these guys in their, making their rapidy raps. We were doing it on the street with like halal carts and doing all of our stuff. And then I went to this reading of In the Heights. It wasn't even really a performance. There was some choreography, but it really was just a reading of the music and singing of the music. There was Alex Lacamoire was on the piano and Bill Sherman was playing percussion. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched this thing, I left. I got on the phone with my mom, and I was like, "What do I do? What do I do?" I have been in that room. I have been in this. You know those stories when people say, like, the first time I heard Barbra Streisand sing, or the first time I read this book, or whatever it is. I'm like, the songs that I just heard are going to be performed by high school kids for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
So what do I do? And my mom said, because I said, I don't have $10 million to produce a Broadway musical. So what do I do? And she said, you do what you do. You tell their story. And that is like one of those moments where that's what I've been doing then. I just try to find people whose stories I want to tell or I want to tell stories with. But yeah, there are a million moments. The first job I got hired to do when I moved to LA was Ryan Reynolds was the star of a sitcom called Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place.
I was going to say, was it Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place? Great. It's a great sitcom. It's a great show.
He had just moved here, and InStyle magazine was doing a shoot at home at a barbecue with him and his friends. And I meet some junior publicist who says, he doesn't know anybody here. He just moved here. He does not have a friend in Los Angeles. So we need some people to come over to the barbecue and pretend that you're friends with this guy from the show. He wasn't Ryan Reynolds. He was just this, handsome, tall guy, Canadian dude. And so the only catch was that the photographers and the reporters from InStyle did not know. So you had to actually go and pretend to know this guy and, be his friend.
I love it.
I met a woman who I dated for 3 years that day. I am working on something with Ryan Reynolds now where, like, I'm on a Zoom telling him that story and he's like, I had no friends, but like all of these things, to your point, like every moment along the way is, a block, a brick in the building or whatever it is, but it's.
And always walk away from the conversation, always walk away from the meeting, always walk away from wherever. And hopefully the people behind you say, I like that guy. If that's what I get every time I walk away from somewhere and somebody says, I like that guy, I'm doing okay.
Well, then you're doing okay, because everybody likes you whenever they have 20 minutes with you, or if they like me and I punish you by making it be a full hour. But
this is great. You can talk for 3, dude. You know that.
Everybody likes that Josh Macuga.
Let's do some rapid fire questions, and I'll let you go. What do you think?
Okay. So are these meant to be like 1-word responses? You want it tight, rapid fire. There's a clock ticking. There's some urgency to it.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Come on, you're a filmmaker. You get it.
Then let's do it. Then I feel it.
All right. Sopranos or Breaking Bad?
Sopranos.
If you had a hot stalker, would you be okay with that?
Yes.
What Friends character are you?
Chandler Bing.
Okay. Should a guy wear a cowboy hat ever?
Depends on the guy, but this guy should never wear a cowboy hat.
Elton John or Billy Joel?
Billy Joel, any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I'm from Long Island, bro.
No, I get it. Do you ever fail a class in high school or college?
Yes.
Cheetos or Doritos?
Doritos.
If you could have a drink with any dead person, who would it be?
Oh, I want to be quicker about this. Sinatra.
Oh, I'll give it to you. Are you a cuddler?
Totally. And you know that, Josh. Let's not.
I do. You read your horoscope?
There have been times in my life when I have. I'm not right now, but there have been times when I'm totally into it.
Okay. Would you go to Burning Man?
Yes, but I'd have to fly and land right there on the playa.
If you had a TV show, you personally, if you had a TV show, you wrote it, you're acting in it, everything, what would you call it? Three, two.
I wish I'd want to get that right, and I don't have the answer.
Doesn't have it.
Look, I named a company. Boardwalk Pictures has something. I'm a guy who grew up by the beach, and I've always been fascinated with the theme. Sorry to break the urgency.
Yeah.
I grew up in a beach town back east. We opened on Memorial Day. We closed on Labor Day. There's a theme in that is like people used to board up the windows on Labor Day, and
because I grew up living in a shore town every summer. I'm obsessed with the Memorial Day to Labor Day and the people that live outside of it.
So it would be. I imagine it would have something to do with that, or the fact that I've had gray hair since I was in 9th grade.
What's your dream car?
A car with my kids in the back seat.
That's a nice thing to say. McDonald's or Wendy's?
McDonald's. Often, in a way that's not great.
Do you know how to tie a bow tie?
Yes.
You ever kick down a door like a cop, like kick down a door?
No, I've made a hole in a door, but I've never kicked it open before.
You ever watched a full episode of Cops?
No.
You make your bed every day?
Yeah.
Best burger you ever had? This is probably a pretty good question, Chef's Table.
J.G. Mellon, 74th and 3rd.
Okay. Can you play an instrument?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like to know? I was a drummer, not like a marching band drummer.
Oh, okay.
In high school, like I was not like,
yeah,
I was not the cool guy at the drum set, but I was the drum major of my high school marching band.
Nice. So you're Nick Cannon in drumline.
Exactly like him.
Exactly. Goodfellas or Godfather?
Godfather, but both.
Yes.
But Godfather.
Favorite SNL cast member?
Oh, that's like favorite ice cream flavor. That's so hard. But, I think that era, I was going to say Dana Carvey because he is just important to me. Yeah. But it's that whole era, Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman. There was something very special about that. But Billy Crystal, not because of his Saturday Night Live casting, but he's an important person in my life. He's from my town. If there was no Billy Crystal, I would not be here.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people that would say the same thing about Billy Crystal. Let's go quicker. Pancake or waffle?
Waffle.
Tater tots or French fries?
French fries.
Fish or chicken?
Chicken.
Chicken or steak?
Steak.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Did OJ do it?
Yes.
Andrew Freed, everybody. Andrew Freed. Hell of a one. And dude, this was so much fun. We should do it again, whatever.
Next year in Jerusalem, Josh. That's what we say at the end of a Seder. Yeah, next year in Jerusalem and next year in person. But this was awesome. Nobody cares. I tell other people's stories. So the fact that you've wanted to tell mine here for the last hour is very cool. Thank you.
Happy to talk more, and congrats on everything, man. Keep making stuff that I love to watch. We've tried to do some stuff together before. I'm sure something will line itself up before we're dead, but who knows?
I have no doubt that we will create something awesome together soon.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, thank you. Awesome. This is so much fun.
We are Freestyle Love Supreme this Friday on Hulu. Check it out. Also check out all the awesome stuff. Cheer, Last Chance U, Chef's Table, everything on Netflix. That Home Game, which I just started watching, which is incredible.
Home Game. More street food coming out next week. Awesome. Street Food Latin America coming out. So yeah, incredible. Thank you.
Love it. Andrew Freed, be good, my man. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Andrew Freed, just an absolute legend. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to do a lot more of these. I'm trying to line up some more guests for the coming weeks, days. We might even start doing a daily morning show. We'll see. But thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Everybody stay safe out there. Wear a mask. Don't touch each other, and we'll get through this. All right. Take care. Bye. Did it end? End.